Everyone, welcome to Automate 2025. I am Dave. This is Vlad of Manufacturing Hub. We are in the Siemens booth today, capturing a lot of super fun applications and everything else. Today, we are joined by Chris Stevens and Anna Marie. Chris, would you mind letting everyone at home know a little bit more about you, please?
So my role at Siemens is, I like to say, I'm responsible for the customer experience.
Okay.
And we usually break down the customer experience into people, process, and technology. So my focus is around the people and process. We want to make sure we're always improving the customer experience every step of the way, whether it's in the attraction phase or during the engagement when we're engaged with them, or especially into delivery, because we're focused on outcomes. So it's extremely important for us that we have that adoption muscle, and then we're working with our customers there. So I'm responsible for the people and process side, and then somebody next to me is responsible for the technology.
Okay, very exciting. Anna Marie, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm leading our accelerator deployment team. So we're basically working on implementing all the technologies that we have in Siemens and digital industry specifically. But then, one part is focused on the technology, but really also how do we implement and actually integrate and move beyond like first pilots. So we typically start with pilot projects and then really looking into how do we scale these solutions and drive adoption, like Chris said. So I'm very excited about how do we go about actually leveraging technology so they create business outcome and business impact, and what are some of the learnings and how we move past pilots and proof of concepts.
And Siemens obviously covers a very wide range of different technologies under different umbrellas. And so the conversations that I've been having at the Siemens booth, at least this week, has been around manufacturing resilience. If we were to maybe get a definition for someone who's looking to understand a little bit better, what does that mean? I think for me, the first thing that resonates is obviously reducing downtime and optimizing the process. But how do you define manufacturing resilience?
That was pretty good, Vlad. I just look back, you can look back 5 years. And look what happened with COVID. So what happened with COVID was extreme when it came to supply chain. If you look what's happening today with the tariffs, that's extreme and people are trying to adjust. So for me, it's simply what you said is having flexible and robust operations to withstand those disruptions. And that could be equipment failures as well. But just most recently, what's front and center, usually as people in mind, is dealing with those big disruptions. How do you do that? How do you make sure that's ingrained in what you're doing every single day in your operations? And you're thinking about that very early on. Is critical.
Anne-Marie, anything to?
I think the other element is the biggest disruption or the biggest challenge that we often see is, of course, the workforce challenge, and how do we empower the workforce, and how do we also attract the workforce to want to come work in manufacturing? How do we make manufacturing an exciting space to work in again? And again, like I said earlier, how do we make sure that we bring these first pilot projects on introducing new technologies, more automation, more adaptive production, eventually moving to autonomous production, right? These are always the technology pillars. But then I think what's really interesting is how do we empower our teams to own these solutions and to really drive also bottom up, identify process improvements and identify like the biggest gap in today's operations, and then starting with a pilot, but then also owning that pilot and the scaling and the implementation of these new technologies.
Let me ask both of you maybe a quick follow-up on that side as well. I think the personnel challenges, every manufacturer that I talk to is obviously experiencing them, but I want to take a step back before we dive into the conversation on that side, on the technology side a little bit more. When we're talking about manufacturing resiliency, which technologies come first to mind when it comes to like Siemens helping manufacturers thrive?
What I usually like to start with every single time we're engaged with a customer is the digital twin. So we start with the virtual world. So anytime you're introducing something new, a new technology, if you're introducing automation to get that flexibility and robust operations we talked about, you want to do it in a virtual world, and you want to prove it out in a virtual world, both from a cycle time perspective, how material is going to get there, ergonomic studies, all those things, reach studies, safety is critical. And so all those things we want to prove out in a virtual world before we move into a physical world. So we always go there first. That's typically where the conversation leads to from an engineering perspective. And then we start talking about, okay, now let's talk about the shop floor and how we implement on a shop floor.
I think these are great points. Maybe to add to that a little bit, I mean, we have this vision of the comprehensive digital twin, right? And the metaverse, where you can basically simulate everything and anything from hydraulics and pneumatic simulation to ergonomic simulation to rigid body dynamics to discrete event, etc. What we often see is that's overwhelming also a little bit, especially to some of the smaller manufacturers. They're wondering, like, how can I actually get started? How do I adopt this? I do fully agree that it is the best place to start in the virtual world and virtually validate, because we're always concerned about disrupting and like the integration complexity, and if I implement a new piece of edge or AI or data integration, is that actually going to cause me downtime in the end because I got to implement it? So the digital twin is the place to start. I think what's important in how we deliver that digital twin is also the as a service concept. As a service not only being our financial modeling or like financial model and the subscription-based model whatsoever, but really having an ecosystem of partners that can actually assist our customers to try out and start working with the digital twin. And it doesn't always have to be that comprehensive digital twin metaverse altogether. It's really about driving bottom up. What is the most challenging process improvement? And is that on a hydraulic simulation, or is that on throughput or routing, and starting where the customer is or meet the customers where they are and really focus on a specific problem more so than trying to boil the ocean and solve it all at once. So I think it's interesting to see how we have this comprehensive digital twin capability, but then really breaking it down in what is the specific impact area where we want to start leveraging that.
Absolutely. I want to go follow up on the digital twin. So on Manufacturing Hub, we've covered digital twin. We've had Colm Gavin on a couple of times. And the things that are possible on digital twin for the past probably 5-7 years is absolutely amazing. When I'm working with customers and clients, sometimes it seems maybe too much, right? Maybe it's more of the boil the ocean type of solution. Can we talk about maybe trends of digital twin? I know you talked about as a service and kind of point solutions. Have you seen more adoption on digital twins from smaller and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I think usually what's interesting is, so there's a digital twin of product and production. So we try, I know it's overwhelming sometimes, but we try to simplify it. So there's product and production. Usually where small, medium companies go first is the product side, because they're using some sort of CAD system or whatever to model their product, right? And so usually when we're engaging on the engineering side, we have a lot of simulation capabilities and those kind of things that we can enhance their existing digital twin. That's not that overwhelming, actually. And typically they're doing all those things anyway. So if you look at the product as the center and all the things you can do around it, documentation, workflow requirements, technical requirements, simulations, whatever. And the same thing exists, by the way, in the production side. They're already doing all those things today. All we're doing with the twin is just connecting them, right? And that should fall on us as the technology provider. And when she talks about as a service, that's why that's so critical, because we don't think the integration should be with the customer. We think the integration needs to fall on us. So that's what we're doing. It's not so much we want to add 10 more things that you're doing today. It's more about the connection of it and the integration of it. That's what's critical to us when it comes to the...
I like that. And Vlad and I have long debated as to whose responsibility is it to do some of these connections, right? Is it the end user? Is it the potential systems integrator? Is it the technology company? And so it's right here. It's Anna Marie. It's completely your responsibility to go do that. But no, I would love to hear more about your thoughts on that. I just want to say that I'm happy to see the move in that direction of connecting all of these technologies, especially when groups may go, are doing, to Chris's point, the vast majority of them already.
I think an interesting aspect to that is like, how do we team up in the end across the ecosystem? That's actually something that we're showing over there on one of the booths, is like the, let's say, collaborative engineering environment in the metaverse, where you would always have different parties involved, from machine builders to system integrators to solution partners to the actual end user, that should ultimately come together to perform this virtual commissioning practice, for example. So to validate virtually all sorts of new solutions that we want to implement, whether that's an AI application or the data integration or the line controller logic whatsoever. So the collaborative environment in the metaverse that we're actually showing today, I think, is a critical element to really bring the ecosystem together and have everybody work on this common foundation, and then have everybody bring in their expertise on the algorithm or the integration piece or like the overall throughput, and actually integrate that in one environment where everybody can collaborate. So I'm pretty excited about that.
If I can maybe take a step back from the simulation component, because I know there's quite a bit more to the Siemens portfolio. in a general sense and ask you a question. And I personally know at least a couple of customers, without mentioning any names, of course, that have been pushing the boundary of automation, and ultimately there's challenges and opportunities that come as a result of that. So I wanted to maybe ask you again what kind of maybe challenges you have faced as you've been working on some of these solutions with the customers, but also what kind of opportunities on the cutting edge, I would say, you have seen as a result of them.
I think a stat that I always like to throw out there is, and she alluded to it earlier, is you used to be able to go out and train somebody on the shop floor for 7 years, and they were good. So I could train you on a new technology. I can leave you alone, Vlad, for 7 years. I'll give you a couple raises in between, but you were good with your operation, what you're doing. Now the technology, I think you alluded to it, the technology is changing so fast. So for us, what's critical when we're talking about the shop floor and what's going extremely well is we're introducing things like Copilot. And I talked about it earlier. For us, what's critical is adoption, right? That's the only way we get the outcomes that we're looking for. So adoption's key for us. So most of our conversations, I would say right now, in leveraging this kind of new technology is around the Copilot and how we're leveraging the Copilot to making sure that when that operator walks up, they understand what's going on, they can dialogue with the machine as if they're talking to a human, and they can make the adjustments and then keep moving forward with this resilient idea of resilient manufacturing. That, I would say, is we're spending a ton of time in that area specifically because of some of the things I've discussed.
And so I think to build the bridge back into the digital twin world and how that's all connected and bring this aspect of copilots where, yes, I mean, we're talking about operations copilots basically that enable a natural language interaction in plain English, right? So literally the machine operator can ask the chatbot what's happening and what do I need to do to troubleshoot this piece of equipment when it's down. We talked about the complexity of simulation earlier. So in the engineering side of the house, we're also adding copilots, for example, to our simulation tools. If I don't have the capability or not the background as a simulation engineer to navigate this complex piece of simulation software, now I can basically also have a chat interface here and say, hey, I want to do this like throughput analysis or this what if scenario. I have these stations, please build it for me. And it goes ahead and builds that, which I think is super exciting. So I think this is where we're connecting the worlds of copilots and connecting engineering and operations. And another piece where we're connecting this, looking into automation and like building basically the bridge between the virtual world and the actual operations is, I would say, in automation lifecycle management. That's another important evolution that we see. As Siemens, obviously, we've been very successful in like product lifecycle management. And 20 years ago, we had this challenge that you would have like your CAD file saved locally in your downloads folder, whatever. And then we started introducing PLM tools. Honestly, on the automation side today, we still sometimes have this challenge, right? So we still sometimes have our TIA portal project and we're trying to figure out, okay, who has the latest version of that and like, where is it? So now connecting these worlds, right, on the product lifecycle management and automation lifecycle management, after we've done first studies in the virtual world and we've done our virtual commissioning, we can now also manage our automation artifacts. That could be PLC code, that's HMI projects, that could be an industrial edge application. We would have different versions that we would have tested in the virtual world, and maybe the engineering copilots wrote some of the PLC code or already created an HMI screen, which we don't trust yet because it's LLM generated. So we want to virtually validate it, but now we can manage all these artifacts, all of these versions, build them, test them virtually, and then deploy literally the identical asset to the real world. So I'm pretty excited about this automation lifecycle management, but I think we need a dedicated deep dive for it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is a great comment. We will get Anna Marie and Caleb Eastman, longtime friend of the show, on for a technical deep dive. And if you have ever watched Vlad, myself, and Caleb, you know that we're going to get probably beyond elbows deep into this, and I am super excited about that. I do want to let everyone know that yesterday, Chris and I, along with Jeff Bernstein, had a deeper dive into manufacturing resilience and the entire life cycle of automation to adaptive to autonomous. We'll go ahead and link that information in the show notes below. I would say beyond that, guys, continue to stay tuned for the rest of the Automate coverage. We've got a full day live in person, which will mean we've probably got a whole month or more of you guys to go watch these super fun conversations. Again, Chris, Anna Marie, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. I'm actually super excited to have this conversation with Bernd Raithel. So we'll welcome Bernd back on the show.
Thank you.
Before we do that and talk about the awesome things that he's doing, we'll go ahead and drop one of the former conversations we've had with Bernd. Now, Bernd, I specifically did not tell you this before we went live, but as you were telling us like your previous history and experience, at some point you like threw in there, and yes, I was in charge of R&D for the S7-1200. And I just paused during the show and I'm like, that is an entire career here. And there you were running like product marketing for Siemens USA. And now you have a super fun new role. And I'd like to go talk about it because I am visibly more excited about it than you might be at the moment. But that probably makes me very American and you very German in that instance. But Bernd, can you let everyone who might not know you know a little bit more about what you've been doing in Siemens and what your new role is, please?
All right. Hi, everybody. Yes, I got a new role now, and I'm responsible for Siemens factory automation here in the US for all of our R&D topics we have here in the US. So Siemens bought a company from TI in '92 in Johnson City, Tennessee, East Tennessee. Great nature, and a team of very talented, very great people developing automation. And since when we developed the S7-1200, we developed the S7-1200 G1 and G2. And just of this micro PLCs, we sold globally around 25 million pieces by now. So this is in itself is a huge accomplishment thing. In addition, the colleagues are also working now on new topics like VPLC, like Sematic AX. And I think we pretty much worked on every other tier portal element and S7-1500 device we have got out, launched in the last couple of years. So we really know the whole tier portfolio and we're involved in a lot of these developments. So maybe before, when I was responsible for for product management of the 1500, I didn't run the R&D team, so that was another piece. And I was working very closely to make sure it's the right thing. Yeah?
Absolutely.
So I'm excited now to take all the learnings from product management here in the US and marketing, talking to all the customers that we have here in the US, all the exciting, interesting conversations around edge, around AI, how we can leverage new technologies. Also take all of that back into R&D and help the R&D teams really also on that journey for the next step to develop the next products, next generations, or how we can go beyond an S7-1200, beyond an S7-1500. And basically develop the next generation of products to come.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up on that, and a fairly difficult question, Bernd.
You should be afraid, Bernd.
I hear more and more conversations, especially with the customers, looking at more software-defined automation, right, or software-defined products. So I think for you who has seen the PLC that is the workforce of automation, to be honest with you, transform into a much more, I want to say, mature product and starting to take some of the concepts from the IT side. What are some of those conversations look like, and ultimately, what are you excited about when it comes to some of those more software applications of the maybe traditional, very hardware-based control system?
So overall, I'm super excited in the direction we're going now with the development, because I started coding when I was 14 years old. So I'm really coding for a long time, and also that's what I wanted to, when I came out of university, that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I did. So I was a lot in development, real-time communication systems, real-time systems. And then also when I worked in the first plants, it was with C, Armos, real-time systems, line control systems. Also worked with codices for a while in the 90s. So it was always more IT-like from a start. And when I had to deal with ladder logic, and it was really like, so what's that? So why do I have to do that? So what I then also realized when talking to the customers at the time, so either I program it in ladder logic or I have to come for every sensor change we need. And I didn't want to do that either. And so, okay, we programmed stuff in ladder logic. So I'm really excited now to see that we really move forward with the IT-like engineering, that we really get more of the IT mindset into automation. And then, of course, what I also learned at the time, it's not just about the programming. You still have to take care of the electrical side, of the mechanical side. If stuff breaks down at 10 at night and you're the only guy left, then you have to find a wire break and you have to deal with all of that stuff. And that's also, I think a lot of the colleagues in R&D know about IT. They know about the processes in IT, how to develop good products in an agile way. But when we also have to make sure that the products fits for automation, fit for manufacturing, and they really help basically a manufacturer to do it in the right way. And that's also where I believe I can bring in a lot of experience from what I did in the past and all the customer conversations I had.
Absolutely. And if I may follow up on with one more question on that side. So I think you mentioned that there's other benefits of a, let's say, virtual control system or a virtual PLC beyond just doing controls on a server or an IPC. So I'm curious, maybe as you have those conversations with the customers, what are some of those selling points? Is it the ability to maybe use their IT infrastructure to deploy faster? Is it the design of the software that becomes easier? Is it remote access, right? What kind of conversations are you having?
No, I think there are a lot of different elements to it. So it's you have first it's software. You can start a PLC, you can stop a PLC. If you need multiple PLCs, it's easy to do. It's not a box you have to put in a cabinet anymore. You can have a PLC connected to real IOs, and you can have a PLC connected also to a simulation environment. Basically, you have two instances of the same PLC running the same code. But the next part is also really that you use still a PLC for the control part, but especially on an edge environment, you can also create your own apps. And when you have a communication between a PLC and between an edge app. So for example, if you want to write some code in Rust or in Go or in some other language, then you can do that. And when this code communicates with a PLC, so it's much more open, much more flexibility, also integrating AI algorithms into a PLC. If you're in a virtual PLC environment, that's fairly easier. For a hardware PLC, you need another module. You're limited with the bandwidth and the compute you have on a server rack. You have no limits at the end.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question along the IT side, right? So one of the main, discussion points, arguments, yelling arguments that we've had is IT versus OT. And I know personally, I define the best groups I work with as groups that have IT involved very much towards the beginning. But I know there are still some groups that struggle with that. Are you seeing trends more going towards we agree that IT and OT need to work together for some of these solutions? Do you see those thoughts coming at some point in the near future? What are your thoughts when it comes to that, Bernd?
I've seen all of it. Let's put it like that. So I've seen companies, we work with companies where IT and OT are very closely aligned and work together in a good way. We see companies where OT already has a lot of IT knowledge. Companies where maybe the head of manufacturing, head of operations was working in OT, went maybe, for example, to Accenture, was way more on the IT side and came back to manufacturing. And then there are companies where IT and OT isn't really working together yet. So I think also for the IT side, for both sides, it's a learning curve. So OT needs to learn more about the processes, but also IT needs to see that not everything is going to be 100% the same, like you would do it for basically IT development, new ERP system, or some other systems you have in your IT environment. So it's just not the same, because at the end of the day, also if you make a mistake or a software doesn't run, in the IT world, then maybe a couple users are unhappy. If a factory doesn't run, 15 minutes or $50,000 quite often. So the impact, if something is not working, is much higher, much bigger. So we really have to make sure when we apply the IT principles, when we go into DevOps, when we have CI/CD pipelines, all of that, you still need to make sure we validate as much as possible that everything in the production continues to run. Otherwise, nobody's going to trust that. And so we really have to make sure also to get the confidence on the OT side, on the automation side, into these new principles, that they can be really used and applied in OT as well. Yeah.
Let me ask you again another interesting question as a follow-up on this IT-OT integration, right? So I think the question of change management gets brought up quite frequently, because ultimately the OT side, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, is very familiar with ladder logic, right? They're familiar with function blocks. They're familiar maybe with some of the older ways of doing things, and that's great. But now we have all these new tools that they ultimately need to learn, need to be able to integrate. And I'm curious maybe to hear what kind of conversations you're having with customers who are going through those challenges, and maybe ultimately how do we equip the people better to have those conversations, to have an understanding like, hey, Now you have a lot more tools. This is what we can do in a more connected, I would say, enterprise.
And that's a good point, and that's also one of the first and easiest examples to go into more IT ways is really with Sematic AX, for example, you have a Git integration. You can use source control. You can have multiple people working on a project. You can in different branches, and then you can bring it together. And this in itself, for a lot of colleagues also on the OT side, is very powerful when you see that maybe distributed 5 people work on a project, and when you merge the code again, and when suddenly everything comes together again, and you have all the versioning, version control, you really see who made which change, what happened. So I think that tool in itself, that we can integrate now also OT tools like Sematic AX and unify elements into a Git environment in itself and have a version control and have a multi-user capabilities is already a great start for a lot of people, and already starts to show the benefit of going into that direction. Yeah? And I think we need some easy steps for everybody to see the value and the power, and then the rest will follow afterwards.
I am very hopeful of that. That is also what I've been saying for, 6 or 7 years. We're certainly getting past the easy steps with some groups. And I certainly do hope that we will be finding kind of the majority of the adopters very soon. And I think we had an earlier conversation with Chris and Anna Marie, and we were talking about manufacturing resilience. And I think we're going to continue to see the force and thrust of technology. And those are even some of the conversations I'm having, is maybe we'll go skip a couple of historical steps and try to jump directly to an AI or try to jump directly to a digital twin. We still have to do those foundational steps to get there, but now we can use technology that is 30 years newer than when we first started going down that, and go and leverage some of those ones. So I 100% would agree with that.
And I believe we have to do it. If we want to do reshoring for the US, we cannot do automation manufacturing the same way we did it when manufacturing left the US. So things have to change, have to be different. And I like the point of leapfrogging, that and instead of just trying to catch up a little bit, let's really come up with a new way, doing it differently and gain the benefits out of it so that we can really get ahead and get manufacturing back to the US. Huh?
Absolutely, I agree with that. I want to talk about the R&D position you're doing. You talked about the group up in Johnson City. We've heard lots of extremely good things about the work that they've been doing. We know some people attached to, I suppose now your group, Bernd, all extremely smart people. I would love to know, how much of the R&D are you guys doing on the US side versus the German side? Are you guys running in parallel, trying to work on different ideas? How does R&D work for such a global multi-billion-dollar organization such as Siemens?
That's a very good question. And it is a global R&D organization, truly global one. So there are a lot of colleagues in Germany, there are colleagues here in the US, there are colleagues in all over Europe, Hungary, Turkey, all kinds of other places. There are a lot of people in India also working on it, and there are also colleagues in China. A lot of the colleagues in China are also working on Chinese-specific products, but also for global. So it's really a true global network of colleagues working together, and there's a constant collaboration. And for VPLC and Sematic AX and these tools, it is truly global, that part of the teams are here, parts of the teams are in Germany and in other places, and then they collaborate on a constant basis, and they use all of these IT tools as well, yeah, to make sure you can work together and that you have a constant exchange, a daily exchange with everybody. Yeah.
Let me ask you, Bernd, a forward-looking question, right? Because ultimately, R&D is all about trying to foresee or forecast the future as much as possible. As much as you can, maybe, could you paint us a general picture of what manufacturing be like in 3 to 5 years? What is your general vision? And again, I think there's a lot to be said about AI. Maybe what are some of your thoughts on how that's going to change, not only from the copilot standpoint, but also maybe on the control side. So I'm just curious to hear what you think manufacturing is going to look like.
Maybe the first thing, elephant in the room, we will have PLCs for the next 30 years, as it is today. Yeah? So we will have a 1500, we will have a 1200, and they will stick around. We just also recently had an upgrade of a 1500. Outside, it still looks very much the same. Inside, it's very different. Your old code still runs. You're not going to notice from the outside. If you download anything, it's all the same. But so PLCs will be around for the next 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. Because we're also like with a S7-1200, if you have a simple automation task and you need one PLC, one small PLC, with 1200 is a great product just to automate it, and you don't have to deal with all kinds of other things. At the same time, I really see that we go more into the virtual PLC. We will have more virtual PLCs running on edge devices, and this really helps us to expand the automation task and integrate AI into an automation task, also integrate other algorithms into an automation task. Yeah? And then this is really where I see future going, because this increases the possibilities of what you can do, how you optimize your machines, how you optimize your production, how you gain more efficiency, and also how you gain more flexibility in adapting and changing your production. Yeah? So this is definitely the trend, and copilots will help. Copilots will help overall. A copilot for engineering will help on all levels with Tier Portal, also with Sematic AX, with all the engineering tools to be more efficient. And of course, a copilot for operations will help will help the workers to be more efficient, to make better decisions, reduce the downtime, and just have the machines running in a better way.
Absolutely, and I would say the challenge for an OEM is to have that balance, right? Because ultimately there's going to be customers who are at that cutting edge, and it depends on the vertical, it depends on the company, it depends on what they're doing as the process. And there's also going to be a lot of companies who have control systems that are 30 years old, and they're looking to just modernize and make sure that it's easy for them to migrate, and they're not interested in pushing that boundary. They just want to run their lines and make sure everything is running like clockwork. So I think it's important to recognize that challenge, in fact, also in the fact that you guys need to be creating hardware and software to some extent that will last 30 years in a factory. So I think sometimes as the end user, we don't realize what challenge that is to foresee 30 years into the future. So definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. No, I would agree with that. Bernd, one of the conversations that we've been having, and it may be a Siemens German term, is you can't boil the ocean, right? You can't do everything at once. So maybe on some of these IT tools, these software tools that we were talking about, do you have a place that clients should start looking, right? It may not be the exact specific solution, but maybe a good entry point if someone is like the IT-OT convergence, the conversations Bernd is having about software-defined automation is important. Do you have a good starting point for people at home?
And let's say I believe that the IT-OT convergence in itself is a good starting point, where today you have your factory as it is. You don't want to rip everything apart, but you want to optimize it. So you want to collect more data. And to collect more data, you can use edge devices. And maybe you bring the first edge devices in your factory to collect the data, and then either you put it on, you analyze it on an edge system, or you pump it up into the cloud and you run your analytics and you start to optimize your factory. But while you introduce an edge device, you also introduce possibilities for the future. Because it's a round trip, getting data from a machine, sending it up to the cloud, doing analytics and getting it back might take 30 seconds with all the stuff in between. Yeah? So it's good for analytics, but maybe later on you realize maybe I need some more operator screens. It could be also a Unify running on edge, an HMI on edge. Or you want to modernize your line control. And then, of course, you already have an edge system, so you can already run a VPLC as a line control. So step by step, you can expand an edge platform and do more. But IT-OT, really the first step, getting in first edge systems installed, collecting the data, contextualizing the data, is definitely a good way to start. And then you can expand from there and go into more and more topics and more different tasks.
I will make the comment once again, Bernd. I think it's really good to see that there's a model where, a small to medium-sized manufacturer has a lot more access to some of these tools, right? Where in the past they needed to invest in the hardware, they needed to invest in the software, where now it scales as their operation scales as well, right? And there's a lot of, again, we can talk about the specific tools, but everything from software to simulation tools, there's all these, I guess, I want to say, opportunities to access and learn and be able to sell that maybe to upper management before you start scaling into your factory.
And then this is also important for us. So we have now for Industrial Edge, we also have an Edge developer kit where you get a virtual Edge device that you can put on any PC. You get for 12 months for free.
Nice.
Basically, you can really download the software, You get an edge device, you put it on any PC you have. You can use our connectors, connect it to your PLC, also Ethernet IP, can collect the data. And then you can write your own edge apps. Huh? And then, like you said, when you can show to your boss what you did, how it's working, and then you can expand from there. And then this is also something we look into the other tools really to have freemium options where people can start, they can install, maybe do a first test in a lab, think about it, get their own ideas on what we want to do, and then expand afterwards.
Super important. We really appreciate that.
Yes, and I will make the point, I know historically people, if Siemens, sometimes you'd have to get DVDs or other things in order to get the software. A change in probably the last 3 or 4 years that I've certainly seen is not only can you go download the software, but there are free trials. And Vlad and I have talked, and I think most of the industry is in agreement that going and having those trials so that engineers can go try this out and try to find proof of value before saying, hey, we need to go pay for the subscription is extremely important. And I personally am happy to see all of the free trials, be it on the Edge Developer Kit or on the Unified or on the WinCCOA or on a TIA portal, all of these solutions and software. So just wanted to make sure to call that out for the listeners at home. If you guys are not familiar with the new, much more modern Siemens, you can download software on the internet now, and there are free trials, which is pretty awesome, and you guys should go ahead and take advantage of that. Bernd, thank you so much for this. Through the power of editing and Vlad, I'm going to go commit Vlad to putting all of the links of all of the different Siemens products that we've put below, because I am just such a good friend and co-host when it comes to that. Bernd, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, yes.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. We've got Louis on. You can see on the shirt, one of the things we wanted to make sure to discuss today, this week, is very much like the foundation of Siemens historically, is the hardware side. And this is an exciting show because Vlad and I have talked about the Siemens S7-1200 G2 for at least a year. It's been officially announced for about a year, but now people can go get it in your hands. I think Vlad is going to go get one in his hands to go do some playing around with, and we're all really excited to see that. But Louis, for the people who maybe don't remember you from the previous times that you've been on, can you tell everyone a little bit about the S7 G2, what you guys are planning to do, and all of that fun stuff, please?
Yeah, exactly. I guess for those of you who don't know me, I'm Louis Narvaez, PLC product marketing manager in the US for Siemens. So I'm responsible for promoting and supporting our Sematic S7 series of PLCs. The S7-1200 G2 we're really excited about. As you mentioned, it's already launched. It's available now for customers to purchase and try out. But yeah, one of the things we highlight is that it's the G2 standing for Gen 2 or Generation 2, second generation of our S7-1200 controller. The S7-1200 controller, let's call it G1 for brevity, has been around since 2009, 2010. So about 15 years it's been on the market. Extremely reliable controller. A lot of people love it, but it's pretty maxed out in terms of its capabilities. And the market demands from our customers are increasing. They want faster performance, they want more functionality, more I/O, or more flexible safety solutions. And the 1200 G1 was really just capped out in terms of what it can do. Hence, the reason why we started development on the G2, the 1200 G2. 1200 G2 addresses some of those challenges that our customers are looking for. The higher performance. G2 is significantly higher performance than the predecessor. Flexible machine safety, some new safety concepts, expansion boards when it comes to safety. So customers can now realize the maximum safety integrity, a SIL 3 or PLE application without having to get a safety relay and having to add object space to the DIN rail, just by expanding with a safety signal board onto their safety CPU. Motion control is another big requirement. Typically when we talk about motion control, advanced motion control, we're talking about coordination. So think something like a material handling application where you have all this maybe pick and place type application, or maybe a flying saw type application, or stamping, or form fill seal. Those kinds of motion applications we would consider advanced because there's a lot of coordination between multiple moving axes. And when you think more advanced functions, typically that would require like a more advanced controller. So the 1200 G2 actually brings all those functionalities into that basic PLC family. So now we can handle coordinated motion in just a starter, simple controller without having to sacrifice performance and price and all that. And then the last cornerstone, sorry, I know you're about to get excited. The last cornerstone with the 1200 G2 is the data transparency. So with the 1200 G2, it's the first Siemens PLC that on the market that has a built-in NFC chip. So that allows us to do, and if you're not familiar with NFC, NFC is basically the same technology that we have in like our credit cards, right?
Yep.
When you do the tap to pay, sometimes
most phones have them. Yeah,
almost every modern
Yep.
smartphone or smart device, tablet has an NFC capability built in. The use case for this NFC chip is we actually have an application available on iOS where customers can get diagnostics, get nameplate information of the controller without having to bring out a laptop and troubleshoot. That becomes extremely valuable because most operators already have a cell phone in their pocket. So if something goes wrong with the machine and I need to figure out what's going on, I can just whip out my phone, scan it, get the diagnostics real easily without having to have any kind of specialized knowledge. And those diagnostics are in clear text, English, or whatever language I guess you set it for, but clear text. So I don't have to try to decipher cryptic fault codes or things like that to figure out what's going on. So really cool stuff there.
Awesome. I've got a ton of different follow-ups for you, Louis, but let me start with a higher level question, right? So if I'm a customer with the current existing S7-1200 install base, which of there's plenty, is the intention to migrate to the new G2 series? Is the intent maybe to modernize in certain situations? What does the actual maybe business application look like for the customers with an existing install base?
Yeah, so the good thing is for current 1200 users, 1200 G1 users, let's say, is a 1200 is going to be supported for a long time.
Yep.
All right. It's still an active product. We haven't declared any kind of phase out up to this point. So customers can still use it for their applications if it fits. So they don't have to change that. But eventually it will be declared as phased out. But the great thing about Siemens is when we declare any product phase out, we usually guarantee spare parts for another 10 years from that point. Like I said, 1200 G1's been around for about 15 years. Let's say it gets declared phase out next year or whatever. I'm just throwing a date out there. Customers will still be able to get spare parts and get a 1200 G1 to replace any failed modules in the field or IO cards or whatever the case is later down the road for another 10 years. That's an overall 25-year lifespan just for the 1200 G1 product. Meanwhile, the G2 will still be available for customers to migrate if they want to. Now, to help with that migration, we do have a migration tool to help customers if they do decide to migrate from a G1 into a G2 for existing systems. Or let's say you've already got a static design, you're a machine builder, and you've already got a design in the G1 and you want to standardize on G2 for new systems moving forward. That migration tool is perfect for that as well.
Gotcha. And so just to, again, clarify a little bit further, because I know this question will inevitably come up on the engineering side. So number one, and correct me if I'm wrong, you need TIA Portal version 20 for the G2, and you also cannot just take a G2 PLC and place it in your older system, which is currently running, let's say, G1 IO. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the first point, yes, the TI Portal version 20 is the minimum software you need to program an S7-1200 G2.
Yep.
So you will need to update your software if you already have an existing license for an older version to version 20, and we have some options there to help out with that, upgrade licenses, cloud licenses, things like that, software update services. That's number one. As far as the compatibility with the G1 IO, the 1200 G2 is completely new. There's nothing we are taking from the old. We are completely innovating the whole system. So the IO is with that as well. Now, if you're familiar with the 1200 G1, or if you're not familiar with the 1200 G1 more or less, is the 1200 G1 IO, they're pretty wide. And so the name of the game also with the 1200 G2 was space savings. Customers are trying to reduce costs, optimize costs with these systems, higher performance, more flexible safety, more advanced features, at an optimized price. Sounds like the holy grail and most unsolvable problem. And so one way that they can do that is, and people don't really think about this, is enclosure size. So we had to make sure that when we're designing a new generation like the 1200 G2, we need to take that into consideration as well. So the IO for the 1200 G2 is all new as well. There are some benefits, a higher accuracy, especially when we talk about the analog cards, a higher resolution, but also narrower design. So they take up less footprint on the DIN rail.
I like that, especially as we go to add more and more sensor and other technology onto our machines. If we don't have to, if we just can replace the backplane, and we don't have to go build a new larger enclosure and run a whole bunch of additional power and then go find space for that larger enclosure, I think that's that's a win. I think it's an interesting win. Talking about those applications, I know friend of the show, Bobby Cole. I know Bobby's had a G2 in his hand before. I've seen him post and talk about how much he likes the G2. Are there any specific applications that you can share that you found people are moving and migrating to the G2, maybe because it has a little bit more? Is it because it has more horsepower? Is it because of the smaller designs? Are there any particular reasons that you're seeing people switch over and become early adopters? Or is it just because it's in most ways better and a smaller footprint?
I've seen a combination of different applications. We had one customer in the oil and gas industry, and it's in oil and gas, a lot of enclosures sometimes have to be explosion proof, right? Those explosion proof enclosures are very expensive. So if you can go to a size smaller for an application, that saves a lot of money for them, right? That's cost optimization. So that was one use case where a customer saw value in the G2 in that, hey, I can actually go to a smaller enclosure because I don't need to have a second DIN rail for my other components that couldn't fit on the first DIN rail. So that's extreme cost savings that is directly correlated to the 1200 G2. We have other customers that they might have been having motion applications where they were doing simple indexing movements, point-to-point movements, and they realized it's not as efficient or productive as they would like it to be, the motion. They want to have something where it's a little bit more coordinated, so a little bit smoother motions, smoother transitions, where they don't have to have kind of a pause between each pick and place movement. And so having coordinated motion is something that's valuable to them. Going from a G1 to a G2 in that scenario provided a lot of value for them as well.
And I do want to dig into motion a little bit more. So in the application that you've explained, the only option at the time would have been to go to an S7-1200 series, right? Which is ultimately increasing cost quite substantially. So now, I guess, what are the delineations of where you would use maybe a G2 series and before you migrate or start thinking about, hey, maybe we need something a little bit bigger?
Yeah, we get this question a lot ever since we announced the 1200 G2. Is this going to take away S7-1500 sales? Or why would somebody use a 1500 now that the G2 has the same capabilities? And you got to remember, so Siemens innovated our S7-1500 about a year or two ago.
Yes.
We innovated by having a new chipset, new memory structure, architecture, and everything. So that significantly boosted the performance of the S7-1500. Let's say your 1200 G1 was right here and your 1500 was here. After that performance boost, there was a huge gap in terms of performance between the two families, right? And so the G2, all it's doing is raising the bar a little bit more, closer to the 1500. So it's still not at the same performance class as our S7-1500. So in an application where you need that higher performance, maybe you need higher axis counts. I had a customer today at this show that came up to me and they're familiar with the S7-1500 and they wanted to learn about the 1200 G2. And after talking with them about their application, G2 wasn't a good fit. Okay. They have a lot of axes, like 200.
Oh, wow.
That is something that a G2 would not handle. A G2 would be perfect for standalone systems, standalone with low axis counts. I would say less than 10 axes of positioning. Anything more than that, it's probably a time to consider maybe an SM1500 technology CPU, a smaller 1500T or something like that. There are some ways to measure that. So in the specs, we have a certain number of we call resources that you can use to size your motion system and figure out if the 1200 is a good fit or not, or if it's a 1500. And that's done through our TI selection tool. The other consideration is memory. So application size is also another thing. So besides axis counts, if it's not a motion thing, maybe it's another situation, maybe it's process related, right?
Yep.
Application size is another thing to consider. Memory is a difference between the 1200 G2 and let's say the smallest SM1500 controller.
And speaking of applications, like again, so looking at someone who already has an install base and is maybe looking to add, let's say, as an example, motion into a G2 controller and replace an older one, what does the migration process look like? Can I just take the software and put it in the new G2 PLC? Is there any maybe changes in some of the structures that I need to be making? Is there any new functions that I could be using on the G2 side? What does the software look like?
Are we talking about between 1200 G2 and 1500?
No, so let's say I have a current like G1 S7-1200 PLC running TIA Portal version 18 or version 19. Sure. That's pretty good. I'm looking to maybe add a couple of axes to my application. And so now I'm considering the migration from that controller into a G2. What does that look like?
Yeah, so as far as the migrating from G1 to G2, again, we have a migration tool that'll help convert your program. The other thing the migration tool does is it does a check of your program.
Okay.
So there are certain instructions that, to be clear, the 1200 G1 and the SM1500, the instruction set wasn't 100% one-to-one. There were certain instructions in the G1 that didn't translate one-to-one to the 1500. So there was a little bit of manual effort to migrate that if you were scaling from a 1200 G1 to a 1500 PLC.
Yep.
The 1200 G2 has the same exact instruction set as the S7-1500.
Okay.
So
So that could be another big selling point, yeah?
Yeah, so keep in mind, there may, in certain applications, be some instructions that might need to be manually adjusted or adapted in the G2 that the G1 had. One example of this is the web server. So the 1200 G1 and the G2 have an integrated web server. The G1 had a different method. If you had a user-defined web page that you wanted to deploy and host from the PLC, there was a certain process you had to go through in TIA Portal to do that. It's a very old way, does take up quite a bit of memory, and it's not very high performant, the web application, but it works. With the 1200 G2, we now utilize the web API. So it's a completely different process to manage the web page hosted from the PLC, to update it. It's not done through TIA Portal. So all those instructions that you would have used in the G1 for that user-defined web page are not transferable into the G2. So that's one example of something that might need a little bit of massaging from the user.
But a good thing.
Yes, it is better because
a little bit of massaging, but absolutely a positive
at the end of the
thing.
day, yes, you get a lot more flexibility, higher performance, better memory utilization. There's a reason why we didn't carry that old way of doing things into the new family. Our S7-1200s also use this web API. It does support the legacy, but that was a little bit different scenario. But in this case, the web API is the way to go for high performance user-defined visualizations with PLC. So going back to Migration Tool will tell you which instructions or which blocks do not migrate or are not working in the G2 and need some attention from the programmer. So that is a very nice tool as well.
That's awesome. Let me ask, so I hope we can do a much deeper dive into G2 and maybe G1 versus G2 versus S7-1500 into the future later this year.
Sure.
Before we completely overwhelm everyone with all of the new awesome things, is there any one last point that you'd like to make for people interested in exploring more the G2?
Yeah, I guess if you want to learn about the 1200 G2, I would say the easiest way to configure one, you can go to Siemens TIA selection tool. That's siemens.com/TST.
Okay.
It's the easiest way to access it. It's a cloud-based tool, or you can download it locally to your PC. I like using the cloud because I don't need to install anything. I can just run it from a browser. Configure your system, get your part numbers. You can reach out to your Siemens distributor or resellers and get started pretty easily. They're very cost efficient, the controllers and platform. If you want to configure the engineering software, you can use that as well. And then just Google search S7-1200 G2. We have a really cool virtual showroom that you can use access to find out more applications for the 1200 G2. We have some really good documentation on it. And on our support site, we'll have more application examples, template projects that you can use to quickly get you started on the various types of use cases for G2. Not only the G2, but just all of our automation portfolio, including our unified system for visualization, our Cinemeric portfolio for drives and things like that.
Absolutely. I will say through the power of exclusively Vlad's manual labor, we will go create all of that information in the live event and in the show notes as well. So thank you very much, Louis.
Thank you,
No problem.
Louis.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. We have actually very normal guests on the channel, Kristen and I. Kristen talking about Industrial Copilot. If you guys remember, so we've been covering Industrial Copilot for I think 3 years at this point, since the very beginnings. The third year we're talking about it at Automate, originally from a tiny little booth on the corner running on someone's laptop, to you, Kristen, last year talking about kind of the expansion of the platform. And there have been a bunch of updates since we last talked about this at Automate. Can you let everyone know how the Industrial Copilot platform has expanded, please?
Yeah, so even just in our booth, it has expanded, like you said, from being on just a laptop screen to what we showed last year with having a Copilot on a digital twin to this year where we have our main Copilot demo going on in our section, but actually there's different Copilots throughout the area of the booth. So there's some, like our Sensei Predictive Maintenance product has a Copilot on it. We have some of our PA software tools have Copilots on it. Copilot's not just a one-stop within our booth. You can find Copilots throughout the area here. So we've really expanded capabilities of it and where we're integrating the tool within different Siemens platforms. So now people have greater capabilities within all different types of technology that Siemens offers.
Awesome. And I would ask you to expand on that just a little bit, right? For those who maybe are only familiar with AI in the terms of ChatGPT or Claude or whoever else, like different flavor of a chatbot, in the industrial sense, it could do a lot more than that. So I'm curious about the different areas. You've already mentioned maintenance a little bit. What is possible with AI?
Yeah, I mean, mean, our industrial copilots are named pretty well where they are chatbots, but they're built for the industrial space. Yeah. So we've fed them with Siemens past projects, Siemens information, making them really fit for the industrial environment. There's different applications for them. So maybe with a typical commercial generative AI tool where you're creating images, maybe having it maybe make an email for you or give you more creative ideas. We're now seeing with our industrial copilots how we can take generative AI and move it into the automation space to answer questions about, I see my machine's down, what is that error, and how do I actually fix that error? And you can prompt questions to your machine. You can have it generate code for you. So that's something a little bit different. And because it is a industrial copilot, the code is going to be a little bit more refined for the automation space instead of maybe something that you're getting from a general tool.
Absolutely. So on my side, I find it interesting over the last year or 18 months. Like 18 months ago, almost no one was using Microsoft's Copilot. And so you try to go explain the generative AI versions of Industrial Copilot, and it was a little hard to go talk about what those chatbots was, what the creation of the code was, what the maintenance operations and other solutions were. And now I go have conversations with clients, Kristen, I'm like, the Microsoft Copilot that exists on all of your solutions platforms, this is the industrial version of that for your specific facility. And so I think that it almost feels like Siemens and Industrial Copilot, normal Copilot to the market. And so it's like the rest of the market is trying to catch up to know what Copilot is, to be able to correlate that to the industrial version.
Yeah, and our industrial Copilot, we did work together with Microsoft to collaborate on it, and we utilized Microsoft Azure with some of our Copilots as well. So definitely a joint effort here to get this generative AI technology out there. But yeah, like you said, within the past year, or even since the last Automate, it's really grown and expanded, and the excitement is still there. It's not like it's old news, but the excitement's there, but the capabilities of it have really grown as well. And even just the user interface of what we're showing expanded and looks a little bit cleaner now than maybe what it looked like last year. So it's always good.
Absolutely. And I would say the appetite, at least in my conversation, is definitely growing when it comes to AI. People are starting to understand it a lot better. They're starting to have use cases, and they're trying to understand what does it take to deploy on their production floor. So I guess my question for you might be is, what are some of the first steps when you're having conversations with specific customers? Like, what are they looking at to deploy Copilot and actually start using and benefiting from some of the...
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends a little bit on which type of Copilot you're looking for and what application you're really looking into. So for our engineering Copilot, that's the one that is integrated into our TIA portals. Basically, the step to get started is have TIA portal, and we can get you started up, and we can have some prompt questions to get people familiar with this. For our operations Copilot, which is focused on troubleshooting machines, first step really is, of course, identifying with the customer, what type of machine are we looking at? What type of documentation do you already have available from that machine? What type of live data can we pull? And really we need to start out getting clean information to add into the chatbot. So we go through periods with customers where we'll do essentially an evaluation phase where we will work with them to get all this information and work with the Copilot to figure out what questions it's answering well, maybe where we need to make some improvements on our end. But really first steps is gathering all that documentation to feed into the Copilot so it's able to be an expert on your machine. When I say documentations as well, any instructions, any manuals, but also any what we found and we're calling tribal knowledge of maybe people who are experts on the machine and now they're retiring, they've moved to a new company, but you still want to have the information that they were sharing with everyone. We can have those people just either write that information down, we could have them maybe do a talk-to-text situation where we can just cap what they know in a textual format. So as long as we have information in text, we can feed that to our operations Copilot and it can become an expert on that information. Yeah,
I will make the comment that is a real challenge, right? I think there's not a whole lot of pass downs happening from the generation that is looking to retire. So solving that problem is a huge benefit for many companies.
Yeah, and even just thinking about that problem before people retire. Somebody retires and you're like, oh shoot, we lost a lot of progress that we've made. So at least having kind of a tool or thinking of how do we capture their information that they are storing from their experiences.
Absolutely, and on the operations copilot side, I'm personally very excited. As we've had conversations of, and as the listeners know, those are a lot of the solutions that I work to solve. In the past, it was going and manually collecting that information and manually doing control find to go ahead and showcase that. So having to reduce the hundreds of hours of that work is, for me, very exciting. Talking about an exciting thing, one other item that was announced that came out this week is the fact that AI agents are being added to the Copilot platform, which I personally think are very exciting. I think Vlad and I had a conversation, 6-week manufacturing hub time about how I definitely view that as a solution for the future. The biggest issue is there aren't industrial super secure versions of that. So I was very happy to hear AI agents are coming to the platform, are now in the platform. Is that been feedback? Has there been demand from the end users that you guys have seen for that? Or is that just the continuation of development of the AI solutions?
Yeah, I would say both. I think AI agents give us just greater capabilities and the problems that we're able to solve. So of course, naturally, we are going to add them into our tools, but especially now with generative AI still being a relatively new technology and our copilots being a new technology, all the feedback we get from customers, where I'm talking to our development team very frequently about what the people here at Automate want to see, and people from past shows. AI agents is definitely something that people have asked for, and I think, like I said, give our tools more flexibility and more power in what we're able to really accomplish.
Absolutely. And then one comment on the AI agents. I was speaking to Olympia earlier this week. We'll hopefully have her on for a much larger conversation where we really grill her all about Industrial Copilot. But the AI agents, it is a Siemens internal LLM that they are building up, which is, again, to the security, one of the big questions. And for me personally, I think it'll be really interesting to see what that Siemens LLM is going to learn across the industrial space in the coming months and years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that customers are concerned about, of course, is the security of their data, especially being in live productions. So with our industrial copilots, the information that customers are feeding into the copilot differently than maybe a general tool, again, that is, once you put information in there, it's available to other users of the platform. With our copilots, your information's kept within your own tenants within a Siemens private cloud, so information isn't being shared to keep it very secure and, industrial grade, essentially.
You've answered my question a little bit, but just to clarify, so the actual AI is running in a cloud that is going to be specific for a customer, and it is not something that you would deploy on-prem, or is there a component that's more living on the edge and the data is funneled into the copilot? Like, how does the architecture maybe look like?
Yeah, I'll talk specifically to our operations copilot right now. So we're in the piloting phases with it and development of it. In this very beginning, everything is cloud-based. So we do have a Siemens private cloud within Microsoft Azure.
Gotcha.
And then each customer is given their own tenant within there to store their data. We're working on-premise versions as well, because that is something lots of customers ask for. It's very important to them. We are working on that and how we can have our copilots running on some of our industrial PCs, actually. So that would be great.
Absolutely. Kristen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. We will be sure to go ahead and drop your information and the information on the industrial copilots for all of the listeners and viewers below. I look forward to getting deeper into what we're doing on the industrial copilot side, hopefully with Olympia, hopefully later in the year, and who knows what the development team will have done between now and 3 weeks from now.
Yes.
So very exciting on that side. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So much. Hey everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. We're back with Sarah McGee. Now, longtime viewers of the show will remember when Sarah was the young engineer, and longtime friend of the show who is not here at the moment, John Detellum, was the grizzled old PLC engineer. We are talking about Somatic AX. And Sarah, can you give everyone like a bit of a reminder, if you will, of what the program is and what you guys are doing, please?
Yeah. So Sematic AX is a new PLC programming tool from Siemens, taking into account a more modern way of doing some of the PLC programming. So especially with a lot of people coming into the industry with maybe different backgrounds and a lot more people maybe having some software development experience, we're really taking the best practices from software development and the best practices from classical automation and really building them into one tool that makes sense for everyone to use and benefit from.
I love that. Vlad has questions. I do want to clarify at home, and I feel like this is John DeTellum's reoccurring comments, and I think we scared like 1,000 people or 10,000 people before. Everyone who programs PLCs will continue to have hardware PLCs, will continue to be able to program in ladder logic or your programming flavor of choice in TIA Portal. This is a secondary, I'm going to say parallel. It may or may not be the appropriate Siemens term, but secondary kind of parallel way for people so they don't have to go through the pain of understanding what relay logic is to be able to program in ladder logic at the beginning.
Yeah, and that's really the messaging that we want to have. Siemens is no way is necessarily better than the other, but we really just want people to engineer in the ways that they're comfortable. And especially as we talk about workforce development and bringing the new generation in, we want to build tools that make them excited to join the automation space. We're doing really cool things, and we want to have tools that reflect that as well to get people involved in it.
And so I just want to follow up on that side, right? What does the workflow look like? So for me, coming from a traditional OT background, I've certainly have had my fair share of ladder logic and function block programming, but I also recognize the difficulty from someone maybe coming from a pure IT, coming from a software background to come in into our world and understand the intricacies of automation. So maybe what does it look like for them to come into Sematic AX and then start programming some of those components?
Yeah, so I would say that especially if they're coming in with maybe no prior automation experience, having a really good mentor in the automation world is going to be key. And a lot of the times that we've seen success is maybe where you have a manager of an engineering group coming with an automation background and bringing in that automation perspective, but maybe you have some more new engineers that bring in that software automation kind of background and flavor. And I think there's also a lot of misconceptions about software engineers or software engineering in general about the automation space. And I do think I bring an interesting perspective to it because I do work in R&D, developing Sematic AX in a very software-minded approach. So when I talk a lot about the benefits of software engineering, I'm really living the practices of what I'm speaking about. And there are a lot of really good things that we can start to apply in the automation space. We just have to keep an open mind about it.
Absolutely. And if I may follow up once again on the customer side, right? As we were talking to some of the more traditional companies who have been automating for many years, are now bringing in, again, more people from the IT and software sides. What are those, maybe some of the challenges and the discussions look like? Because again, I think a lot of them are trying to bring in a different workforce that I think is going to add different value, but needs to understand the OT floor, be able to program these devices. And there are different challenges in change management.
Yeah. I would say start small and start with what you can apply maybe concretely on existing projects. And it doesn't have to be with a tool like Sematic AX where you're doing a fully new kind of workflow or environment. Just start by starting to implement practices that we do already see are involved in automation. We think source control management and version control. These are practices that were taken from the software industry, and we do see really the value of them and using them in the automation space. And we just continue along that journey and begin to slowly integrate maybe some more of those practices in a way that makes sense. So I think just starting small is always the way to do it, starting in a way that's easy to grasp in projects that you already have, and then just continuing along that journey.
I like that. Let me ask the question, Sarah. So are you seeing people who are using both AX and TIA Portal within the same organization as part of a workflow? Do you see some organizations transition from TIA Portal to AX with a younger generation of engineers? What are you typically seeing out in the field with customers using?
Yeah, so I would say especially right now with Sematic AX, I would say maybe smaller companies are ready for more of this migration, more startup mindset companies being very easy to adopt some of these practices. But for existing organizations that have already large projects set up in TIA Portal, you're talking about a lot of work to start to migrate to this methodology. But with Sematic AX, we do have some options to be able to integrate certain portions into TIA Portal if you are looking to get just a little bit of a flavor of that. But we're really talking about transforming the next generation and the next 10 years of automation with a tool like this.
Are we okay? Because I feel like that's the perfect ending. I feel like you just crushed.
Everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. We have Kevin here today. If you guys remember last year, and we'll go roll the video, we were talking with Jim Wilmot about Robot Pick AI, which was a super cool application, but it was still very early on. And Kevin and his team have done what I've been told is a tremendous amount of work.
It's the team.
Absolutely. Kevin and the team have done a tremendous amount of work. So Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about what you guys have been working on in Robot Pick AI, and maybe like a couple of applications that you're seeing some early success, please?
Yeah. So if you do get a chance to kind of automate, we actually have an updated Pick AI. It's called Pick AI Pro.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so the Pick AI Pro now, the pick rate is actually dramatically increased.
Okay.
Because now we put it in our IPC, Siemens IPC BX59A with the NVIDIA graphic card.
Okay.
So now we can push over 1,000 picks per hour.
Oh,
so if you're
wow.
looking for efficiency, productivity, this is definitely for you. But maybe let's talk about some of the updates.
Yes.
So through a couple of customers, we have learned that a lot of customers, because we can only do suction cups.
Yes.
We cannot do grippers. That's always the first question people ask. Can you do grippers? Picking up unknown object. It's a challenge. It's not easy. However, we did make a lot of improvement with the Pick AI Pro is that when it goes and scans that bin, it doesn't have to be a bin, by the way. And no, we were talking about bin picking. That thing beyond bin picking, okay? It just basically needs to scan various product within the view of things right there. Once it scans it, it basically go and pick. It actually can tell you the dimension that it's picking up now. Yep. So that's really nice. It cannot tell you the weight. A lot of people ask, hey, can you tell the weight? We're like, we're not that smart yet. We have a way to do it if you really want it, but let's not go there. Anything that Siemens can do, we can figure a solution out for you guys. But right now, we support multiple grippers with the multiple suction cups.
Okay.
So what that allows us to do is think of a big cardboard sheet. A single suction point picking up, that will basically make it tilt.
Yep.
So it's really unstable.
Yes.
So our customer gave us that feedback. They need multiple suction points. So we support multiple suction grippers with different patterns. So now when it goes and scans that product, we know the dimension. We can allocate certain suction gripper patterns to pick up that product effectively and very stable, and then move it to basically how you want to sort it. You want to put another conveyor belt, whatever you want to do with it. So that's one of the biggest improvement there. And then also additionally, what they did was we're trying to be more camera agnostic. So now we can try new camera manufacturers. We can actually upload the configuration of that camera and then immediate test with it. So that's one of the biggest improvement with the Pick AI Pro. And that's what I want to show here. And then just another shout out to our manufacturer that we're using at the show. So they actually loan us the Zivit camera. Their new Zivit camera actually can do transparent products. So we have a lot of customers here asking, can it do like transparent bio? Because there's a lot of medical processing now in the US. And then we'll say, yeah, with the Zivit camera, we actually have a few clear bottles right there, showing how easy to pick up various of clear bottles. So people saw it, immediately automate. That proves the point.
Yes.
Instead of saying, yeah, we can do it, but let's see it in action right here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask a completely unprepared for follow-up question for you, Kevin. High heat applications.
High heat?
Are there high heat applications, or is it more like ambient temperature? When I say high heat, like 280 degrees F. Are there grippers that we could use for something like that?
Or suction cups, we can't do grippers.
Yes.
Because we rely on other manufactured components. So if there is another manufacturer that does high heat suction, maybe from Festo, from somebody from Shimos or something, if they provide that, then that's their, I guess, product specification. Then we can definitely use it. But Siemens provide the kind of like algorithm, the AI algorithm, the brain, the solution that glue all these products together. So if you do have that product specification, I would say go and seek out, maybe even do a Google, you will find other manufacturers that can support that. But from Siemens, we don't have specific product for those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a good question, though.
Let me ask you a follow-up, maybe again, staying with the application side. So I've done a lot of work with the CPG companies, and ultimately on the vision side, it was always very predictable product. So it was very traditional vision where you could define, here's a repeatable process, it's the same product going through the line, and obviously it could be different orientation. But in this case, I wanted to ask you, I could see a lot of applications for multi-packs, right? Where you have different products packaged in the same container. Is that where this truly shines? Is there like interesting applications that you've seen that truly pushes the boundaries of what you're showcasing here?
And that's actually why at a trade show, I always ask, so what kind of product are you working with? Is there a kind of bottleneck that you've seen, or is there something that you want to improve or add more SKU numbers? So yes, you're right. Most of the production line, they know their product. However, I always ask, okay, so does your product vary in certain ways? It's the way that you guys are sorting them. Are you guys placing them neatly, row by row, column by column? And they say yes to all this. And I say, that's easy. You can use a any vision camera. Basically, it knows the first spot. It always pre-programmed spots, pre-programmed product. However, when they start vary things, just tiny little things, or if the production shift a little bit, offset, that's when that's when everything goes crazy. I was going to use the wrong word. That's when everything goes crazy, because that slight offset basically makes the whole picking basically very difficult. And so with the Pick AI Pro, it's not pre-programmed. It's looking at basically unknown product, know where it is, and pick it up. So you don't have to make a neat row and column, which saves so much time. And also for future proof, if you want to introduce 500 more SKU products, no problem from the engineering production line side. Imagine if the designer goes, oh yeah, I want to make a little design here, add a little few object here, and then the engineer goes, all right, I need a CAD drawing for that. I need to get ahead of you before you produce that. Yes. So that's one thing I've been talking, and a lot of customers just nod their head and say, yeah, this is good. I definitely want to look, can I scan your number? Can I scan this? Can I do this? I was like, that's good. Let's follow up and do something like that.
I would say to your point, Kevin, of people saying, yes, we put everything in the perfect rows every time. We think that. We think we put things in the same place, right?
Correct.
And then you start putting some like squares down on the corners, and then the pallets are within 5 feet of the squares, but they're not always within the squares. And then the items on the pallets, unless we have a palletizer putting something, or unless we have a machine putting the tubes or the test files or any of that in exactly the same place, and exact in terms of robotic sense is very different than exact in terms of human sense.
But this is where I challenge them. I say, do you guys even want to make it even more future-proof? Yep. So right behind our PKI demo, we have a digital thread wall.
Yeah.
So we did basically a digital twin of our UR PKI Pro demo.
Yeah.
And so this is where I say, so wouldn't it be very nice if you can actually test this in a simulated world with the product actually there, and you can see how our PKI algorithm actually picks up your new product that you have not tested yet or even produced yet, and see how effective it can pick. That's what our digital thread can allow you to do. And this is where they just go, and they see, and then we show them how we're doing right now. We just drop random product. We even drop it in a grandfather clock or an alarm clock back there, just to demonstrate in people. We can put all kinds of product in there. It's a virtual world. You can do anything. It's almost like
surprising.
It's almost like Looney Tunes. Yeah.
That is surprising because a lot of us have spent like many hours, if not days or weeks, tweaking the vision systems. And it's, as Dave was saying, you tweak it at the lab for several weeks, then you bring it onto the production line, tweak it again, then there's going to be a changeover to a different product with a fairly slight variation in most cases. You still need to retweak a lot of those vision systems.
Or there's a skylight above you and it's a cloudy day, right?
Yeah.
So there are so many of those human interactions. Completely agreed, Vlad. On the digital twin, digital thread wall side, are you finding lots of groups who are going towards the Robot Pick AI Pro, going and first investing in these twin solutions?
So one of the kind of unique proposition with the Process Simulate, that's our digital thread offering, it supports all the robot manufacturers you see here. There's a whole long list from ABB, KUKA, UR, Staubli, you name it, we can support it. And so they were really surprised. Oh, wow, you guys can support the whole robot kind of manufacturer in your digital thread. And that's, but oftentimes customer uses one manufacturer in their plant. Typically when they are with FAN or UR, they stick there, unless there's different payload requirements. And that allow us to simulate a lot of robot manufacturing and be able to really test the different path, different picking, and then we add the AI algorithm onto it. And that's where the benefit they see is that it's an inlet. You want to imagine, think what's a possibility, and then they can think about the benefit. When they know the benefit they can get from, that's when they want to take the first step, at least in my opinion. And then we can tell them, we can easily demonstrate that for you guys as well. When people see it, because this is digital thread. This is not like sending them a product. We're not sending you guys a product, a solution that's integrated. That takes time. We just have to configure it, send them a little video of the demonstration, and they see it and they go, wow, show me more, tell me more. How do we do this more? And that's the power of what Siemens can offer. We can send you a video of what we kind of configure. It doesn't cost us that much, a few hours, not hardware products. That's where Siemens really shine, in my opinion. So
one of the things that I really like at the show this year and at the booth is we have the physical solution and we have the digital twin, digital thread version of the solution. We see this. We've got a conversation as a continuation for the Cinemeric Run My Robot, in which we've got the digital version here in the booth. We've got the arm doing the digital, but then 100 feet down the way, we've got KUKA, who is actually using that, which is really cool. And we've had Colm Gavin on talking about Process Simulate and NX and all of those in the past. Absolutely fantastic. And what we've told them is sometimes for some groups, it's really hard to go imagine that. And so being able to go showcase and having multiple showcases here really excite me, and I hope we continue to see more of that.
But to piggyback on the imagination part, so when you actually come and see actually our demo, we also added another separate solution there on our Pick AI because we're working with NVIDIA. So our BX59A IPC has the NVIDIA graphic card built in. So we really want to show NVIDIA's power. They have a lot of, I guess, apps and something you cannot even imagine. So we actually have a thing called visual language model that's displaying there. So we have a separate camera. So what the robot is doing is picking up any unknown products. So we're using the Pick AI Pro, and it's taking it to that second camera. That second camera is taking a snapshot of what the robot is holding, and through the NVIDIA's VLM model, is telling me what that product or object is. It's like ChatGPT. When you send a picture, you upload a picture, you say, hey, you ask ChatGPT, tell me what this picture tells. It's a man with a woman with a dog. So this here, you're telling me it's a Band-Aid box. But if it doesn't really know what's going on, it actually reads what's on the box. And then on top of that, NVIDIA told me that you can even ask, is this product expired? It knows the date of today, and then it can read the expiration date. And it says, is this product expired? Yeah, I was very blown away. But then the NVIDIA full-blown model of the VLM, they have an application where they use it for surveillance camera, where you're constantly watching the surveillance stream, and you can ask the surveillance video footage, can you tell me this person wearing the red backpack? When did this person enter the building? When and where? It will spit out all the timestamps, which is awesome from the NVIDIA AI standpoint.
That's really cool.
Yeah. If I may ask you a follow-up and taking a quick step back, right?
Yes.
So I had a gentleman actually reach out to me from the medical device industry, and he's looking into some vision systems applications and trying to understand what's new. What does it take if he brings out, let's say, as an example, some products to test out something like this, right? If he sends you maybe, I guess in my previous life, when you want to test something on the vision system, you obviously set up a test bench.
Correct.
What does it take for you guys to, let's say, from receiving the product to being able to pick the product and then place it where it needs to be and do some of those inspections?
Yeah, so if someone who sees our show demo and they want to know how their product actually fits, how it can be fit to our algorithm, we say, please send us maybe a sample of your product, the variety of your product, and we will throw it into, if it's a bin application or if it's a conveyor application, and then we have a testing lab in Berkeley, California, in the US. They have the whole thing set up there. They can actually run the test and actually send you video of it. And then if you got any kind of follow-up questions, we can tweak it to get you to convince that this is the solution I want. That's the whole point. A lot of people now, they want to see everything almost done before they will take the leap, because this is something that's very innovative, pushing the boundary. Most of people don't want to leap off a cliff. They want to make sure that they're safe.
Absolutely.
And Siemens is trying to provide the steps, but then we're asking, our booth logo is, why step where you can leap? So we're asking them to leap a little bit too, just tie into the whole message. I don't know if you guys saw the messages everywhere. Right there. Awesome.
Kevin, the marketing group is going to love you. Kevin is the new face of Siemens USA right now. Hits all of the messaging 100%.
Definitely.
You've also mentioned the secondary camera that's performing a lot of heavy lifting for potential different use cases. When customers are reaching out to you, what are they trying to do with that? Are they doing label validation? Are they doing checks of the product? Are they doing maybe inspections? Can you do like maybe non-conformity of the product if the box is deformed or something of that nature? Like, I just want to expand a little bit more as to what is possible and maybe what is going to be possible into the future as well.
So one thing I do want to make it clear that the Pick AI Pro is not an inspection process. Because a lot of people start looking at it and say, is this doing inspection? It's not. It's really simplifying picking.
Yes.
And then the video application it's a visual language. It's more, I would say it's more deciphering the image, telling you what it is. But we do have just shout out to another station here, maybe a lead into the inspector station. That one is dedicated for visual inspection. But the cool part about the inspector is that it only takes less than, I want to say like 100 samples or 20 samples.
I've heard 20. The number I continue to hear is 20.
Engineering me like to multiply by 5 just to make sure the double checks.
20 is less than 100, Kevin, so you are 100% correct in that.
5 tries, 20 times 5, there you go. But the whole thing is a standalone system. It's almost like you can take the whole system, put your product in front of it, and test it immediately in that same hour. And then if it shows you value that, hey, I can detect these little defects, you will want that right away.
Absolutely.
And I always joke around, that's like a medical device that you carry around and show people, hey, I can show you the x-ray. If you see that x-ray, never seen an x-ray before, you've seen it, you're like, oh my gosh, I can see the fraction.
The veins,
That's what it's doing for you. The inspector, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know I can see the defects right there, right then. How much saving can I get out of that?
Absolutely.
So,
Kevin, this is super exciting. We've covered so much ground. If there is one takeaway that you want the people at home to have about Robot Pick AI Pro, what is that? What should they remember?
maybe the biggest takeaway is that when people come in, they already have established automation solutions.
Yes.
So they almost put on the fence when they talk to a different manufacturer. And we tell them, we actually can work with whatever automation solution you're using right now. Our solution is innovative. It goes on top, the IT, OT layer. And that's one of our takeaways. So that makes them open the gap a little bit to let us put our foot in and say, can you imagine what we can do for you?
Yes.
That's my takeaway. Why step when you can leap?
Oh,
Going back.
Kevin,
I got a slow class.
Kevin, this is fantastic. I do have to say there's one downside in all of the hard work that you and your team have done from last year to this year is our expectations of Automate 2026 for Robot Pick AI Pro are going to be much higher.
That's fine. I take that as a challenge. Never a downside. Half empty, half full.
Absolutely.
We look forward to it.
Fantastic,
Awesome.
Kevin. Thank you so
No
much.
problem. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. I am super excited to go talk to Ivan again, talking about the G220 drives. If you guys remember last year, we talked to Ivan. It was the release or just about the release of the G220.
Right at the beginning of the launch.
Maybe it was released, but now you could just finally get it sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there's some fun updates. And for all of the longtime listeners of Manufacturing Hub, you guys know that Vlad and I love to talk about hardware. And I feel like there's lots of really fun software things to talk about, and we talk a lot about software. So we're happy to go hit some of that core industrial hardware conversations, and drives are absolutely within that. Ivan, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Let me ask you maybe a very first fundamental question, right? So we talked about drives, but could you explain for someone who doesn't know the G220 series at all, doesn't understand maybe the Siemens portfolio, could you explain what are we talking about today?
Yeah, G220 drive is our next generation variable frequency drive. People use drives to either save energy or control process. So that's why you would want to use a variable frequency drive to control motor speed, control motor torque maybe, but that's why people use drives. And the G220 is really our next generation of variable frequency drives.
And so as a follow-up, so what kind of new features, right? So when you say this is the next generation of frequency drives, what can you expect out of this release of the...
Sure, by next generation, I guess we mean it's new power electronics, so lots of advances happening in power electronics over the last couple of years. So we start from the ground up with that. And then things like integrated cybersecurity. Previous generation of drives, we weren't talking about cybersecurity so much, but guess what? Now we are. So things like having cybersecurity designed in from, at the design phase in the beginning as opposed to bolting it on later. And I'd say the same thing with safety, just more safety features designed in at the beginning instead of bolting on later.
And just as a follow-up on that side, so a VFD ultimately is a box that allows you to interface between the digital world and sort of the mechanical space, right, by driving a motor. But ultimately, what does the box also represent? Can it be put in a panel? Can you put it on the machine? I think that's a very usual question. Can it be in a washdown environment? What does that look like in that sense?
Yeah, so the G220 has a couple of different flavors. One is, it's designed for somebody to mount in their own enclosure so they can customize that however they want. Or we have a new offer, something that's new again with a next generation drive, is a Type 12 offer, which that would let the user mount this drive right on a wall. Excuse me.
And you mentioned, Ivan, security, which ultimately means connectivity, and I think there's more and more of a push to getting information, data, but also being able to control certain parameters of the drive, whether that's through a PLC, an HMI, or any other platforms. Could you talk a little bit more about what does that look like? Yeah,
at the show here, I've talked to a variety of people. I talked to a controls engineer. He wants as much openness when he's configuring this, working with this. He wants as much openness as he can. But okay, once this gets out to the factory floor, not everybody needs to see everything, right? Okay, the maintenance person, we're going to give them the ability to look at this slice of data, and then maybe the operator, we're going to give them the ability to look at a different slice. And just all those things are configurable in our new security.
Interesting. When we were talking about the new Type 12 enclosures that we'll go throw up some B-roll so you can see how large and impressive they are, I was thinking back, so Vlad really likes to tell stories of his food and beverage days. When everyone's just out in the line with the hose, I assume it's a water hose, we're just hosing everything down and we're hosing around the VFDs and sometimes they start back up. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, yes, this is what Vlad really needed. Think how many thousands of VFDs we would have saved him and the stress of thousands of that every year.
Yes, to that comment, I would say it's much easier to purchase the right device than it is to train the people operating some of that equipment.
There you go.
Around,
That's good advice right there, Vlad.
And Ivan, you were saying one of the other initiatives was this clean power.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the clean power, and then you and Vlad can compete to talk about why the clean power is important.
Yeah.
I feel like we've really hit Vlad's groove talking about the G220 and power factor today.
All right, glad you brought that up. Yeah, so there is a clean power variant for the Cinemeric G220 drive. And really the key things about this are very low harmonic distortion current, near unity power factor, but also in a very compact space-saving package.
Yes, and if I can add, Ivan, like why that's important for the customer, right? So maybe ask you to add to what I'm gonna say. So number one, right, so first of all, you affect other electronics on your production lines as you start to increase or decrease some of those voltage levels. But number two, your power grid is also going to charge you quite a bit more if that is out of...
You're exactly right. Any device that's converting AC power to DC power, which is what we're doing in variable frequency drives, there's the opportunity to generate harmonic currents. And those harmonic currents is what you were referring to as nobody likes to see those.
Yes.
And also the resulting low power factor. People like power factor near unity, and with this product, it'll give you near unity power factor.
Awesome. If someone wants to learn more about the drives, if they're interested in some of the features, where can they go? Is there a link or maybe a website that explains all the information?
Yeah, I've been giving a link out here. The best place is just like Siemens.com. Then you can or Google or use your favorite browser to type in G220 clean power drive, and it'll bring you to a great source of information.
We will go ahead and link that down in the description of the videos and the show notes for our podcast users. As I like to say, Ivan, through the power of only Vlad will we be able to go ahead and do that. So we'll be able to make sure that we have the correct links for everyone.
That's a great idea.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back, fellas.
Yes, absolutely. Hey everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025 with Manufacturing Hub. Again, I'm Dave and this is Vlad. We have a couple of special guests who have promised to only scare us a little bit. We've got Gaurav and Tilo on the Siemens ICS cybersecurity side. Now, longtime Manufacturing Hub listeners will know that is the scariest topic anyone can humanly possibly talk about, because these guys are going to go try to convince us to dig a hole in the backyard, and that's the only safe place to be. Having set that up, Tilo, Gaurav, can you tell everyone a little bit about what Siemens is doing on the ICS cybersecurity side and maybe help assuage the fear that I've just brought for everyone?
I think you don't have to have any fear about it all, because actually what cybersecurity does is protecting what you're investing in all the time. And if you put cybersecurity from day one into it, you can make it so easy to use and so easy to applicate. The only thing is you have to think about it from day one, not after everything is established. So in what we both do, actually we are in a crazy stuff. We are in a cybersecurity research group from Siemens. So we do really the deep dive stuff, even using AI to have network self-protection with AI machines. But what we are doing here today is actually we are supporting the business units, the digital industries from Siemens to bring our latest products to the market and to showcase our capabilities and what we do. And now the Gaurav, because he's even more special than I am.
Thank you, Tilo. So what I would like to add, you don't need to be scared, because we are using these solutions which we are promoting here for many years in our own factories. So we really stand behind our solutions. What we are showing at our booth in cybersecurity here is also a vulnerability management solution, because in the old days, you can say, okay, my shop floor is really disconnected from the internet. There is no connectivity. How can somebody is going to reach it and exploit unless physically there? But now with IIoT being in the shop floors, connected devices, edge computing and everything, you are not sure about that risk anymore. So maybe your critical assets are now having a connection back to the internet somehow through another jump system or so. And those vulnerabilities which had a CVSS score of 5 or so now are really critical for your business. So I would say you need to remediate them and also prioritize based on risk. You don't need to fix every single thing. You need to identify where your risks are, where you are most exposed, and how to use your cybersecurity investment to do those faults, basically.
And so maybe to ask both of you to expand on that a little bit further on the practical side, right? Is that a scanning tool where you can identify the network, the layout, the architecture? Is it a firewall that you have a solution for? Is it a network switch or router? What does it actually look like from a practical sense for the manufacturers?
Sure we can. Let me give you a brief understanding. So since Siemens is very huge, we also have a very huge setup of the cybersecurity landscape. Which means at the other hand, we're supporting every level you can have there in cybersecurity. So we really start with asset management to identify all the assets which are there. And at that point, we are vendor agnostic. So we don't care which protocol to speak. We will also detect, besides Siemens, Breu, Schneider, Avago, whatever, because our customers, they're having a heterogeneous environment. So we need to help them on all these levels. And on that one, we put the whole network layer with all the firewalls, from standard firewalls over next generation firewalls or whatever you need, including authentication, identification, and all the processes there to really build it up. And then on top of that, what he just started, the vulnerability management, and on top of that, the whole detection system. And it goes up to the zero trust level, and it even comes with a complete managed service for OT SOC, for real cybersecurity operations center. And we shuffle it all around because we start with the whole assessment purposes. So if you need an assessment, we don't do audits, so don't get us wrong. We come in and we do an assessment to help you to progress. And that's actually a very valuable point, because once you know where you are, you can build your program. So we are also there to help you build the program. And at the end, we can set it all up from this first assessment over the whole product solution, what you need to do what is best for your specific environment. And since we are both in research and development, there's always the innovation part, because the attackers don't slow down, so we don't slow down either. But if you want to have one specific example on how we do vulnerability management, then Gaurav can a little bit explore on that one.
Maybe before that I can add is it's all about people, process, and technology. So you cannot solve this problem just by buying fancy technology from anyone. No matter Siemens or anybody, not technology. So what we are doing is going into the customer factories or customer engagements, starting with the assessment, trying to find out where your weak points are, and trying to see where you can make your investments like more fruitful, where you can get best ROI out of it. And then from there on, suggest, okay, you need to maybe have more people, you need to maybe educate your people about cybersecurity, because human factor is really important for cybersecurity as well. And from there on, also suggesting new solutions, as we talked about, whether you need firewalls, whether you need to segment your network more, or maybe you are missing only on the vulnerability management side. So maybe we can talk about Cinemeric Security Guard, which we are showing here, as well as the booth, which can help you remediate vulnerabilities based on the risk of your different assets and which criticality they are, whether they are exposed to the internet or not. And same way, you don't need to, it's a journey. You cannot fix a cybersecurity problem in switching on and off a cybersecurity, right? So you need to build this maturity over time. This is a 3 to 5 year program. You come with us on a journey, start with assessment, and
Let me ask you a follow-up on that side, right? So maybe taking a step back from the customer perspective, what is usually the trigger when it comes to starting that journey? So I know on the European side, there has been some compliance requirements, and it's no longer really an option to not be protected to some degree, but maybe in the North American landscape and the world as a whole, what do you see starting those conversations?
So in the past years, I always had the feeling that everybody was seeing cybersecurity just as an insurance. So everybody either I'm paying $1 for my insurance or I'm paying $1 for my process improvements. So where does my dollar go? So usually it went into process improvements because that's returning into revenue. But now they are starting to split the dollar, like saying we still need the higher investments into improvements, but since the improvements are there and they are so critical to maintain, we also need to spend part of the dollar to really keep it up and running. And there comes intellectual property in place. So really it's a lot about issues. So where is my intellectual property? How can I secure it? Then coming all the regulations in place, especially CIA, NIS2, etc., and the critters in all over Europe. But that's a heavy part. But then it's also, since all the ransomware attacks got more and they are not stopping at the IT business level, that they are also going down in the OT level, and then they're also having really physical effects. So if you combine all that one, then it's really a lift for doing more and more, really on the critical infrastructure you use in your manufacturing processes.
Absolutely. Feel like we have 20 more hours of conversation to have, but we're going to use this and let everyone know that we're going to have Tilo and Gaurav on to have a longer conversation. They're going to take us through all of their really cool screens and probably terrifying software to some extent on a later manufacturing hub. If you guys want to make sure to stay tuned to that, make sure to hit the follow, subscribe button, drop a comment below, and we will make sure that you guys all get notified when that comes out in the near future. Hi everyone, welcome back to Automate 2025. We have a super fun conversation. So we have Rusty on the outside with Siemens, we've got Ron on the inside with KUKA, and this is like a twofer, right? So not only do we get to talk about Cinemeric Run My Robot, which we talked about last year a little bit and got an overview, so we get to get the update on what's happening, but something really cool is happening. So in the Siemens booth, which Rusty will hopefully talk about in better detail than I understand, we've got the simulated version, we've got a robotic arm going, and then 100 feet away, Ron has the application actually up and running, which is absolutely fantastic. I am happy to hear it. So Rusty, can we have you tell everyone at home, hopefully a little bit more about Cinemeric Run My Robot, what you're doing, what sort of those applications are, please?
So what we're showing is Siemens Create My Virtual Machine, and we're simulating in the CNC world an integration of a automation, which is done with the KUKA control, right? In this application, fits right into the job shop world, because if you've got a CNC and you want to automate it, you can add this feature and add on the KUKA control, right? It adds right into the CNC control. And so you can not only machine the parts, but you can also easily do part hand.
Absolutely. And so the value, we had talked last year about the controller being much more precise in applications like aerospace. Yeah. Is the value here, do I understand it correctly, is that there's one controller shared between the CNC and the robot, or it's just a more similar controller?
No, that's exactly right.
Okay.
If you're a CNC operator, G-code, the CNC your way around, how to write programs, how to get the productivity out of the control. And the advantage of the Run My Robot, because the robot control is done by the CNC, you're programming the robot motion also in the same environment, so with G-code.
Ron, you're the person that had to go make this vision actually come to life, which is probably the hardest of any of the jobs that we've had here at the show. What's been your experience? Do you normally work with the Cinemeric Run My Robot? Can you tell us a little bit more about that smaller job shop application as well, please?
To be honest with you, I normally deal on the robot side.
Okay.
I program in our language, and of course we love our control.
Yep.
But for a lot of job shops, they don't want to learn a new robot.
Yep.
They don't want to learn the robot. They don't want to train their people. So if they already know the Cinemeric side, the CNC side, they can program the robot from that.
Okay.
No new language to learn, common operator interface.
Yeah.
Makes it really simple for the operator and the programmer. For a robot guy, I don't like it because I lose control and everything's on Rusty's side, but it works. So my job to set it up is really easy, and then I hand it over to Rusty and he took control over the robot.
Okay.
Completely different system than we typically deal with, but it makes sense on the NC side.
Yeah.
And so if we take maybe a step back and look at the highlight of different applications that this could be useful for, is it material handling? Is it machine tending? Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more where this could be useful?
Yeah, the Run My Robot we call this Run My Robot handling. So it's really designed around a handling application, machine tending, which is exactly what we're showing here. The KUKA automation is feeding trays of parts to the robot. The robot's picking and feeding the raw parts into the vise on the CNC machines it, and then the robot's unloading it into the bin and repeating that process.
And what does it take to deploy something like this? And so I've mentioned to you a little bit off camera, come in with a traditional control systems background, less of a robotics background. So if I wanted to work on such an application, is it through TIA portal? Is it its own interface? Am I building this in a robotics language? Could you maybe elaborate on what it takes to build out such an application?
The control system, the Siemens Cinemeric control is an 828. If you're familiar with the Cinemeric 1, the 828 is the younger brother, little brother of it.
So you don't use TIA Portal. There's a Siemens PLC still in the 828, but it's a 200 series. So we use a different PLC programming tool. The PLC programming tool is part of the Cinemeric toolbox, so you get that when you buy it, when you get the toolbox for the 828. And in this particular case, what we did was we had the CNC machine, and to get this application running, we simply enabled a second channel, and that second channel is like a separate independent process from the CNC. CNC operates in the first channel, robot in the second, and we set up a network connection between the KUKA control and the Siemens 828. We set a few commissioning parameters, and the Run My Robot environment is then available within the 828 control. And then it's a matter of writing the robot motion programs from within the part program editor. So it's very straightforward, to be perfectly honest.
Absolutely. So what has the feedback been? And I guess first I want to ask, is anyone seemingly as excited as I am about seeing the digital version and then seeing the physical version? And then second, maybe on the Ron side, what is the feedback of using these CNC controllers to go run robots?
We've got really positive feedback from some of the Siemens users, because typically NC guys are afraid of robots for whatever reason, and they're not going to hurt you, and they're there to help you. And this gives them the ability to really disconnect from the robot side and stay on the NC world.
Okay.
And for them, it just opens up a new toolkit for them. We're doing material handling, like Rusty mentioned, but there's no reason you can't use that second channel to allow the robot to do deburring. It could be another process. So the NC could be doing a big job, take a long time, and you redeploy the robot to do some other secondary or third process.
Interesting. Rusty,
multiple tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, Rusty, have you also gotten similar feedback? Are the people you're talking to excited about it?
Yeah, so if you work with the Create My Virtual Machine, so we were able to simulate the KUKA robot in the virtual. And what that lets you do is do all of your process planning and those kind of things, work out the logic and those things virtually, even before you have to go out to the plant floor and deploy it onto your machines. Yeah, I think the Run My Virtual Machine is a great tool. Lots of advantages from using it as a training tool for your machine operators. So they can visualize the robot motion and the CNC working together. And if he's a little unsure as maybe a new operator, if he makes mistakes and bangs the grippers into the fixtures, he's just doing it on the virtual machine, so no harm done, right?
Absolutely. Fake grippers, digital grippers are significantly less expensive than real grippers. Absolutely. No, fantastic, guys. Let me ask you both the same question. Is there any one thing in particular that you would like the viewers at home to take away from the Cinemeric Run My Robot, either what we've got set up or the application and platform as a whole?
I guess I would say, again, as I work through this project, the ease or the simplicity of integrating. It really deploys very nicely into the Siemens 828, and the functionality that you have between the Siemens and the KUKA is very good.
Yeah, there's really no limitation on what you can create using that second channel in the robot. It's up to the designer to figure out how far he wants to go with it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you both so much. Musty, Ron,
thank you.
Guys. Hey everyone, I'm Dave. This is Vlad of Manufacturing Hub. This has been Automate 2025. We're hanging out in the Siemens booth, where, as we said earlier, why step when you can lead? Thank you guys for coming and watching. We will continue to go ahead and release these videos, or if you're watching on podcast form, we'll continue to go ahead and release these short conversations into the future. Please do remember to do all of the important things like follow Vlad, myself, our guests, hit the like and subscribe button, and follow along for more Manufacturing Hub adventures.
Awesome.